Okay, we need to talk about this because you keep talking about Patreon.
No,
Yeah.
it's literally just a running joke in my brain.
Okay. I was gonna say you keep
Okay.
talking about Patreon. This is 3 guys in their mid to late 20s talking about Steven Seagal films. The
Yeah.
podcast should be titled "Listener Poison." I could commit to like wire fraud while doing the Zodiac killings and moonlighting as DB Cooper, and nobody's listening to this. It wouldn't matter. There's 0% chance of a Patreon, but it is very funny that you keep saying there's a Patreon, so you can keep saying it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm gonna keep mentioning it.
Okay, good. Okay. As long as you know the Patreon has $0 and always will.
Ooh,
Okay.
we could actually make a Patreon, and every level is $0.
But you can't check your 6. It's kind of like, taking a screwdriver to a gunfight. What's happening? Just like old Tom.
But anyway, welcome to Steven Seagal, in which we watch every Steven Seagal movie, of which there are 50, and we are on number 5, Under Siege.
And we've already hit the
1982's
peak. This is as
Under
good as
Siege.
it gets.
10% of the way through. Let's celebrate that.
Hey, we're 10% of the way through. Let's
A tenth of the
celebrate
way
that.
there.
Yeah, that's a positive, I guess.
It is a
No,
positive.
it's not. No, it's not.
No, that's I mean, it is a positive, but this is the peak. This is as good as it
Right.
gets. It's
I mean,
all
that's what I've
downhill
been
from
told,
here.
that this is as good as it gets.
Right.
It does tell me something that when I'm on the IMDb page, it's just giving me trailers for Jason Bourne movies.
Nice. Well,
Like
okay,
a
I
little
don't wanna steal
preview thing for Steven
Hold on,
Seagal.
I don't want to steal your introduction, but this is kind of segueing me into what I want to talk about. So
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Do your introduction. No,
Ooh.
no.
Oh no, okay, we need to talk about the plot. That's
It's
right.
Rules.
I have to give
What
a plot
separates us
synopsis.
from the animals.
Yes, they do. So let's give a little plot synopsis. So in Under Siege, Steven Seagal...
And no reading. I can see you on the Wikipedia page. I see it in your glasses.
Excuse you, I'm on IMDb. I was trying to remember Steven Seagal's character's name because I can never remember a single character name.
No, we're
From
gonna
a
start
Steven
blindfolding
Seagal movie.
ourselves.
Oh,
We
this
gotta
is-
do the no Wikipedia.
This is the
challenge.
only one I actually remember because my quote for this one has his name.
Oh boy. So Steven Seagal plays Casey Ryback, who is
yes.
supposedly a cook on the USS Missouri.
There's more.
Just after we start reducing our nuclear stockpile in the United States. And it is the captain's birthday, and so there's a birthday party, which goes terribly wrong. And
Or
his
terribly right, depending on who you ask.
his second in command, played by Gary Busey,
Prime of
brings
his career, Busey.
brings in pirates who were trained by the CIA specifically to take over boats and
And submarines.
and submarines. There's a submarine, and they take over the ship in order to sell the nuclear warheads, which are still on this ship for some reason.
It's because these colors don't run. That's the reason.
Well, it was on its way to the next port to have them
Yes.
offloaded.
There you go. They are going to be sold to foreign governments, and he wants to. I think they say they're going to have $200 million in the bank at the end of this whole venture. But Steven
surprisingly
Seagal
little amount of money.
is so cool
Well, adjusted for inflation.
that he foils the whole thing, and there are several explosions. Blows up a helicopter, blows up a submarine, and he gets to kiss Miss July
89?
89 from Playboy
No,
magazine.
you don't forget Miss July 89.
I just forgot what year she was from. But that's basically the movie, I think. Am I missing any major plot beats?
I mean, you
Tommy
got
Lee
the
Jones
synopsis.
is in this
There's
movie.
obviously-
I
yeah,
haven't
we're
mentioned him
obviously
at
gonna
all.
interrogate some plot beats, but you got the broad strokes.
Okay,
Yeah.
those are the broad strokes of the film.
Got the gist.
So what's everybody's general impression of the movie? Let's start there.
Oh man, I hate that I liked it. It bothers me so much because this one was, I struggle to say good, but it was good. Like, this was actually an enjoyable movie to watch. The problem is, And I think Zach put it best because yesterday he was talking about how it's only good because so much of the movie you focus on Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey, and Steven Seagal only gets about a third of the screen time, which makes it just immediately better. But at the same time, like, his parts were not terrible, I guess, kind of elevated by good cast and good direction. But there were definitely a select few times where I was like taken right out of that fiction and reminded that, oh god, yeah, this is actually Steven Seagal that can't deliver lines and can't act and can't run, and it just kind of ruins the moment because otherwise
do so much running in this
it's actually a good movie.
Luckily, being on a boat, the amount of foot chases are slightly limited.
I can only remember like really one moment where he ran.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. But there were a good many where he kind of ruined what would have otherwise been a good scene.
Yeah.
So, on Steven Seagal's first, on his freshman outing, missed the bag, fumbled, completely failed. Take 2, sophomore slump. Missed the bag, failed. Okay, third time's the charm. Okay, missed the bag, failed. Okay, fourth time, this is it. Nope. Still, nope. Exactly what you'd expect. Missed it, failed. Fifth time around.
This is his super senior year.
The super senior year, my man finally graduates to making a halfway decent movie. So I want to be very clear, because I'm very similar to Hans on this, but probably during this podcast, I'm going to be heaping a proportionally good amount of praise on, spoiler alert, what is like a 3 out of 5 movie. Like, I want to be very clear. I'm going to say kind things about this movie. I don't want this to be it's actually a good movie, though. Like, from the outset, I will just lay down expectations. It is a very okay movie. It, like, succeeds at what it needs to do, but it doesn't do anything exceptional.
I personally would go so far as to say that it is a good movie.
A good movie.
And I don't think that's giving it too much credit, but that's only because if you replace Seagal with literally anyone else, if you just had Bruce Willis in place of Seagal, it would have been 4.5, maybe 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
Because Seagal's in it and because he can't deliver his lines. That's what brings it down to 3.
I don't agree totally with that. I just said and then upon further examination, I don't agree totally with that. I think there are like some structural problems and writing issues with this movie.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not perfect. It's not perfect.
It's just 4.5 out of 5.
I said maybe, probably 4, but
okay.
I'm just saying, as an action movie. Okay. I mean, they're all action movies from the 90s. None of them were realistic. They were all about crazy amounts of explosions and gunshots, and you have that in this one.
Okay, so is it okay if I segue onto something off?
No, go for it.
Bruce Willis. So,
because this is, yeah, I know.
We will see some character development here, and several times throughout this episode, Zach will receive his comeuppance. The first time, while I was watching, I assumed, we talked about this off pod, so for a summary, we went into a little bit, but a bit more off pod. Before we even knew we were going to do a podcast, we talked about a theory that Steven Seagal is trying to be Tom Cruise, like very, very much wants to be Tom Cruise. That when you look at the movie poster, like if you just look at it in passing, it like looks like Tom Cruise, like
because you can't see his hairline.
They're Photoshop. They cut off half his face. You can't see his hairline. Like they have him, it looks like he's channeling Tom Cruise. So I saw trying to look like Tom Cruise in a Navy uniform. This is going to be Top Gun. And I was like, sure, it's going to be like knockoff Top Gun. That's what I assumed. And then I thought I was like so smart and clever, like 5-10 minutes into the movie. I'm like, this isn't Top Gun. This is Die Hard. Like, I bet, look at me, Zach, making the connection. This is Die Hard on a boat. And then as soon as I went onto letterboxd.com to log my review and see other people's reviews, immediately I saw like 20 different reviews mention, oh yeah, it's basically Die Hard on a boat. Yeah, it's Die Hard on a boat. Yeah, everyone knows it's Die Hard on a boat. And I was patting myself on the back, like, that film miner is really coming in clutch here. And then just to like, with one visit to one particular website, realize that I will truly never have an original thought of all my own. Like just seeing like... So I'm like, okay, we all know it's Die Hard on a boat. Fine, sure. Doesn't make it not true, but it does make me not as clever as I thought I was, which is even worse. I'd rather be wrong. So, yeah, it's Die Hard on a boat. But here's the thing. So that's one of the reasons why I still say like it's a decent movie, is even with a more competent actor, it's still Die Hard on a boat, and Die Hard is still better at being Die Hard than a knockoff is. Like,
Yeah.
I would still have to say, like, Die Hard is 4.5 stars, and this, even with a more competent actor, would be like 3.5 stars.
That's fine.
You
That's
see what I'm
okay.
saying?
I
Like,
see
it
what you're
doesn't do
saying.
something original, and even what it does, there's some, as Aaron alluded to, some structural issues that we can perhaps dive into.
Well, so
No, you go ahead.
Okay,
I thought. I
gonna
just
give my
said
general-
to pretend like I had a thought.
yeah, I was gonna give my general impressions here. So I
Yeah.
would give this like 3 stars, but it's a soft 3 stars.
So
What does a
one
soft
half
three
of a
mean?
star less than you gave Above the Law.
I did not. So
Let me be clear.
When I asked my dad about this movie, who loved Above the Law, by the way.
Like father, like son.
Yeah, well, when I asked him about
This is like
movie,
instead of teasing, like I saw you, you like a girl or whatever. This is gonna be like, hey, you liked Above the Law. I bet
Well-
you and your dad both love Above the Law. You watch Above the Law every Sunday.
So, like, I asked my dad about Above the Law after I saw Above the Law. I asked my dad about Under Siege before I saw Under Siege. I didn't ask him why he had this opinion, but he hated it.
Well, do you know why
He does not like Under Siege. So then I watched it and I went back to him. I said, "Oh, you didn't like this movie? Why not?" He said, "It's so improbable."
What? Wait.
That's his problem with the movies, that it's improbable.
Wait.
To which
okay.
my mother said, "And Above the Law is fine."
Thank you, Aaron's mother. Speaking some logic, speaking some sense.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, I said, this is just as probable as every other Steven Seagal movie. Like, I mean, it makes about as much sense as all the other Steven Seagal movies.
Well, okay, so wait, maybe he addresses this, but I have a theory / question.
Ooh, okay.
So for a little background, your father
My dad
was, and
is a
I'm
Marine,
told
20
when
years.
I say was, I'm told I'm incorrect. That you're always a Marine.
Yes.
Your father is a Marine.
Yes.
And this movie features Marines.
Yes.
Your father was not an Aikido master recruited into the CIA who then became like a detective.
As far as I know, no.
So do we just think this one hits a little closer to home, and
That's-
the inaccuracies,
Now,
you know?
That's
will
what I
say-
assumed, honestly.
I will say anything with Marines in it, he becomes like 10 times more critical.
Yeah.
And that's
See,
fair.
That's yeah. that
Which,
makes
yeah,
sense.
I mean, yeah.
So what's your
Makes sense.
excuse?
My excuse is that the movie...
And your excuse can't be the bottle of wine.
No, my excuse is that the movie is just, like, fine until the end when it stops making any sort of sense. The last...
Sure, but
15
okay,
minutes of
then
this movie-
explain Above the Law.
Above the
Wait,
Law, I was
wait.
having a good time watching that. That
What
was
happened in
exciting.
the last 15 minutes that you didn't care for?
Okay, can we talk about some weird stuff that happened in the last 15 minutes of this movie? I hate to jump to the end.
No, that's fine.
But let's jump to the end.
Okay.
Final confrontation
Yes.
between Steven Seagal and Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy Lee Jones is like kind of the main villain of this movie, by the way. I feel like we've barely talked about him.
He not kind of as he is.
Yes.
Well, he and Gary Busey play like tag team villains.
Well,
But
Gary
Gary
Busey was
Busey
the ship's
reports to him.
XO. He was second
Yeah.
in command, and Tommy Lee Jones is like his boss of the
They kind
crime
of seem
ring.
to give each other orders, which is strange. But anyway, Tommy Lee Jones is a rogue CIA agent who is specifically trained in how to take over vessels at sea. And so
It's a living.
his whole thing, as is revealed by the director of the CIA, is that the CIA knew that he was about to go rogue, and so they sent a hit squad to kill him,
Yes.
and the hit squad failed.
Well, no, it's not that they knew he was about to go rogue.
Mhm.
It was essentially that he was just kind of too dangerous to be kept alive. Like it was
Yeah.
more like just retiring an agent. It's not like he's going to
Yeah.
go rogue. It's more like
Mhm.
he did this
He,
mission that
he
we
had
just
become
like,
dangerous.
we can't have a person who did this mission be
I-
alive.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure it was more of what Aaron said first. I thought that
I'm
they
pretty
had
sure, Rob.
some kind of psychological evaluation on him, and they decided that he was.
Too dangerous. Whatever
Yeah.
it was, he was too dangerous
Well,
to be
so
left
actually,
alive.
can I just make a funny little? So I was
Yes.
taking notes while I was watching this movie.
I
because
was
I'm a
too.
Professional. I made a note there that I thought was very funny. So that was during his little broadcast there,
Yeah,
which was amazing.
that was great.
that was maybe my favorite scene. So for frame of reference for people who you do not need to watch this movie.
You don't need to. You don't need to, but of all of the 50 movies that we're going to subject ourselves to, this one would be the first one that you would consider.
And even if you're not doing a year-long challenge to watch every Seagal movie because you are like a healthy individual, this one I think you could watch outside of, like, you could just watch it as
you could just watch it
anyway. But he has this fun, like, on this boat, like on this like official, like, you know, Navy boat or whatever, you know, big boat. They have like this like
a battleship,
you know, this microphone on a boom. Like, they have like what basically looks like a podcasting setup that they use to communicate directly with, like, you know, all these dudes sitting around like the war desk in their fancy suits. Mm-hmm. So the whole time I'm just imagining him as a podcaster, especially because at one point he starts going. No. Listen, rewatch that scene. It's so funny because he's just like, we only have like an inch of topsoil left. You know, the New World Order's coming after us. Like, he was legitimately like an Alex Jones podcaster. Like years, decades before any conception of what that even was existed in our minds. Like, if you watch that, the only thought I was having was like, this dude would like make a killing in the current age. He wouldn't even have to do the terrorist acts. He would have probably not a Patreon. He'd get kicked off of Patreon. Mm-hmm. He would have like direct fan donations and sell like
he could have his own like InfoWars style website that would make
dress
millions.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite parts is he says something along the lines of, they canceled the mission and then they canceled me, which had a very different connotation than it, like thinking about it through a 2023 lens. Yeah. All I can think is just like cancel culture. Like, they canceled my man, what's his name? The villain that Tommy Lee Jones plays?
Billy Stranix.
Like, they canceled my man Stranix. Like, you know, people are on Twitter just like finding problematic things that he said in the past. When he said, like, they canceled the mission and canceled me, I was laughing at that so much. And because I was already in my head picturing him as, like, you know, he's evil Conan and Gary Busey's character is evil Andy Richter. And they're just, like, doing their, like, Sirius XM, like, Howard Stern and Alex Jones podcast. But that was a longer tangent than I meant. But he's killed because he's too dangerous to be kept alive for a reason.
So he's trying to get back at the United States government by stealing nuclear warheads and selling them to a group of like international pirates on a submarine that he stole as well. He's a very effective maritime thief. And so at the end of the movie, when Tommy Lee Jones and Steven Seagal finally have like their face off, which has not happened, like they barely interact through this whole movie, and at the very end they have a face-off. Stranix, Tommy Lee Jones, alludes to the fact that Steven Seagal is familiar. He says, "You recognize me, don't you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I kind of do." And then they have a knife fight, and then Stranix dies, and it's never explained what that was about. I have a couple theories.
This isn't necessarily a criticism, but the funny thing I noticed from that scene is the fact that Steven Seagal gives the villain speech.
Yeah.
You know, in a lot of movies when it's like, we're not so different, you and I.
Yep.
Like, that's what the villain says to the hero, but Steven Seagal is saying it to Stranix.
Speech. Yeah.
It is so weird that he's the hero and that he's given like that. Like, in every other way, this is like the most typical like action movie you can follow. And then at the end, like, honestly, it just feels like they're writing the script and they had Stranix say that. And Seagal's like, he's getting all the cool. I want the cool. I can't do the Seagal voice. I want the cool lines. Give me those lines. And they say it doesn't make sense. And he says, "I'm Seagal.
You're probably not far off, honestly."
I'm also okay. So we were talking about like the poster for this movie, which I'll get back to why the poster makes me mad for a couple reasons.
That's a big one.
But so I'm looking at this poster and I'm remembering back into the movie. And I'm thinking, why is Steven Seagal in the front of this poster, and why is it not Tommy Lee Jones? Tommy Lee Jones, who like actually does stuff throughout the movie. He is Jason Bourne, like that. He has the same character background as Jason Bourne. He was an agent who got too dangerous, and so the government sent a hit squad after him, which he defeated and ran away. The only difference is that Jason Bourne uses his powers for good.
Question mark.
Tommy Lee Jones steals nuclear warheads. Like, up until the movie starts rolling, they're basically the same character. And this could have easily been a movie about Tommy Lee Jones's character, and I think it would have been better.
Well, I have an assumption about the poster.
Okay.
I'm gonna speculate about Steven Seagal's ego a lot in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Because we discussed in Was that marked? No, it wasn't marked for death. What's the one about neighborhood values?
Out for Justice.
Out for Justice.
Out for Justice. We marked in Out for Justice that this was a thing, that there were like edits and fights and confrontations with Seagal behind the scenes because William Forsythe was like upstaging him.
This movie
So I
feels
would not
very
be
heavily edited to me.
Well, it feels very heavily at one, but also like this is one of his movies where like the floating heads poster would make sense because you'd have like Busey and Tommy Lee Jones, and like there is actually a pretty solid supporting cast to this one.
Oh yeah,
And not even just like we like them now, like these were actually
more famous.
More like yeah, like this was right before The Fugitive. Tommy Lee Jones, like The Fugitive came out like the next year, and he had been in like other stuff before this. I would not be surprised if like in some way his ego, him not wanting to be upstage, they're like, okay, we can't literally cut every scene these two are in because they're upstaging you in every scene they are in. So we'll give you like the poster to yourself. Like this is the least Seagal-y movie so far, but it has the most Seagal-centric poster. Like it's just his face.
Yeah.
It is just the most unappealing part of him.
Like he is central to the plot. He is central to the plot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is true.
But this is the first time it feels like a movie like Seagal stars in, rather than like they just built a movie around Seagal.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that. So the
like
last
he's a star. Yeah.
The last
action
4
hero,
movies have just been movies that are about Steven Seagal, but they just give him a different name. This is like a movie in which Seagal plays a real character who does things.
This is truly the closest he gets to being like an action star.
It's the first time we haven't had a scene like in the beginning of him teaching his martial arts in a dojo.
We don't find out until about like a third of the way through the movie that he's secretly a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And not just a cook, and not just a Navy SEAL, but like the best Navy SEAL.
Like everyone in his platoon got killed, but it was someone else's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was removed from the program because he punched the guy whose fault it was.
Who had it coming.
And
so this is like the one time he just like like the one movie he assaults person, and you're like, you know what, actually, that was just
like,
but okay, there's no issues here.
But I have some theories as to like why the finale of this movie was so weird.
Okay.
And like why there are these strange lines in there about them knowing each other in some way. Okay. So I have a theory. Yes.
Before you do that, I just thought it was very funny that so in a lot of movies, a character starts like in a lot of action movies, a character isn't even necessarily the toughest one, but like because of their tenacity, because of their determination, or their love or whatever, they're able to overcome the bad guy.
Yeah.
In this one, he catches. They have the absolute worst knife fight on the planet Earth.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad.
It's like a slap fight.
The funniest
like,
little arm.
And there are like weird like cling cling sounds going on.
It's awful.
They're just like punching air at each other.
But he wins by catching the other guy's teeth in his mouth, gouging out the guy's eye, stabbing him in the top of the head, and then shoving him into like a computer console.
Yeah.
That was.
Some of the fatalities in this movie are very strange. I think it's a very quick scene, and it's at night, and it's outside. It's really dark, and I don't know if I saw it properly. But it looks like he rips a man's throat out with his bare hands.
Yes. I went back.
I have that in my notes.
I had to rewatch that one.
I did too.
So I was concerned this movie was going to disprove my theory that
there was no blood.
Just like, well, no, okay, no.
There was, but not
I was worried
enough.
this was going to disprove my theory about like Seagal being like amoral RoboCop would be better. But like some of my favorite parts in this movie, he drops like a steel girder, like
straight through
like
a guy.
Point down straight through a guy.
Yep.
Like
there's something.
ways.
Oh, he shoves a guy into like a bandsaw.
Yep, I have
and
that.
like rips the dude's throat. But they're like you said, it was relatively bloodless. Like legitimately, like I was like, did he just like pull the nicotine patch off this guy? Like what I had to go back.
Oh, the injury
I was like,
in this movie are actually really bad, and I don't know why.
But I was like, you know what? I'm right. If he was just like absolutely amoral, just like gory, like NC-17 rated killing machine, that's his niche. That's the action. That's what he should have been. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
So originally when I was thinking about this movie and what I was going to say about it, I thought, and I was during the course of the movie before the last 15 minutes, I thought, okay, there are like lots of little things in here that I don't think I'm going to bother with. Like Tommy Lee Jones' costume changes between scenes. Like he'll walk down a hallway and then go into a room and he has a different costume on. Like he switches between like this rock star tie-dye shirt, leather jacket with like metal studs and stuff on it, and like acid wash jeans and a black fisherman's sweater. Like he'll just randomly flip-flop between the two. And I thought, okay, that's a little inconsistency. It's whatever. I don't really care. And there are like lots of little things like that throughout the movie. But then once we get to the last 15 minutes, I thought, wait a second. This movie, I don't know any behind the scenes things. I haven't really researched this because I watched this movie last night. But
yeah, why'd you do research before your podcast?
I want to know if in an earlier version of the edit, Steven Seagal, that mission on which everyone but Hedon died, he was the hit squad sent to go kill Stranix.
That would be interesting.
I think that was the original thing, because as it is in the movie, they have no connection at all, which is fine. That's fine that they don't have a personal connection. Then they should have left out the
question about how.
But then they should have
familiar.
Taken out this conversation they have at the end about looking familiar to each other. Like, why do that? And so I think in an earlier version of this film, the mission that Steven Seagal was sent on, that got everyone in his SEAL team except for him killed, was to go kill Stranix. And so you have this whole thing about... Then you have this whole thing through the movie about, like, a SEAL team goes to try and take out Stranix, and they die. So that happens twice in the narrative, if that's kind of what Steven Seagal's character is. Because there's also this whole scene where SEAL Team 5 goes in to try and take out Stranix on the boat, but they all die in explosion.
Oh, rip in peace. I'm looking right now because I think you're truly onto something.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see anything yet. I don't see anything confirming code. But I'm 100%. I'm like a truther on. I'm a Seagal was sent to kill Stranix truther on this.
Oh my god.
You've convinced me.
I think Seagal was sent.
I mean, that would make a lot more sense. I want to believe it because that makes more sense and would make a more interesting movie.
Yeah, right? But I think...
Like, why don't they have that?
Well, because I think you are right about they had more screen time together throughout the movie.
Oh, I see.
And they had more interactions throughout the movie.
I can see that.
Seagal refuses to give any time that he's on screen to any other actor, so it just didn't work, and they had to cut out all the scenes they had together and restructure the movie so that they don't know each other. But everything that they filmed in the finale, because the movie is about their relationship, everything in the finale, all the dialogue has something to do with them knowing each other. And so the final confrontation of this film is like a couple strange lines about them knowing each other, a terribly edited knife fight that's like 1,000 cuts a second, and then Steven Seagal throws Tommy Lee Jones into a computer monitor.
I have to say,
the finale to this film, like the final confrontation of this film, is so incredibly strange and boring and anticlimactic.
Honestly,
I don't disagree with any of that, but we're giving a lot of to that final climax. The part leading up to them fighting, when Tommy Lee Jones is giving his speech to Seagal, and he's like walking around the room and pulling his gun like back and then throwing it back in his face as he's walking around objects. I don't know how else to describe it. His performance in that scene was phenomenal. It was like the best bad guy, the best, most very good at portraying this insane person who still has control of their mind. I don't know how to put it. It was very, very good.
No, there are legitimately great performances in this movie. Tommy Lee Jones has to be the standout. Like,
it's
by
just
far.
It's just a shame that immediately after he gives his speech and is walking around the room and acting incredibly well, then you have Seagal come in with this accent that he hasn't had throughout the rest of the movie.
No.
Completely different accent.
Oh, he can't figure out what his accent is.
And then says the same garbage that you were talking about earlier, that he gives like his own bad guy speech it just doesn't make any sense. So it ruins that. That's what I was talking about earlier, where you have what could be the makings of an excellent movie, and then you're ripped out of that fiction viciously and reminded, oh yeah, this is a Steven Seagal movie, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh crap.
Yes.
Well,
that could have been so good. Like,
something I do want to point out there is, so I think both. This is maybe not. I don't know. This is either spicy hot, lukewarm, or bitterly cold. I don't know of what level of take this is. This could be any temperature take. But I think they had truly the only director who could have directed this movie on board to make it. So for a little background, the director of this movie is Andrew Davis.
Yeah.
And so Andrew Davis, like we mentioned before, I think we mentioned before, I can't remember. I mentioned in my Letterboxd review, he directed Above the Law, Steven Seagal's first film, Aaron's favorite Seagal film.
I mean, canonically,
Then-
you're not wrong.
Then after that, he was kind of on a run here. So 88, he directs Above the Law. In 89, he directs The Package, which I've not seen before, but stars Gene Hackman, Joanna Cassidy, Tommy Lee Jones, John Hurt, and Dennis Franz. So he has a Seagal movie. He has a Tommy Lee Jones movie. And then here in Under Siege, he has a Seagal and Tommy Lee Jones movie. And then, like I said, right after this in 93, just a year later, he has The Fugitive.
Okay.
Later on, in 2003, he has the movie Holes, where Shia LaBeouf plays Stanley Yelnats. That doesn't relate at all. That has no
It's a
impact
cool
on this.
fact.
But I think it's kind of funny that the guy that did Under Siege also did Holes.
That's
So I
pretty
can
great.
tell you, with The Fugitive and Holes, I haven't seen all of the other movies he's made, but Under Siege is at the most his third best movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Holes and Fugitive, it kind of depends which one I'm going to put him with.
Which
the other.
again
if
makes
if we're
me
going
think
for camp or if we're going for action.
They had a much
But-
cooler movie in there before.
And so that's my speculation, is that he was able to just like get the best out of Tommy Lee Jones while like suppressing the worst out of Seagal, because he had personal experience with both of them.
Including, and here's my segue into this, his ponytail. He cut his hair for
Yes!
this movie.
He did.
Yes, no, I want yes. My Galaxy Brain theory, my truth or theory on this is that like he fought for that.
Mhm.
That because he was at peak ponytail before this.
Oh my
man
gosh.
had
Peak
my man
ponytail,
like a
had
foot long.
greasiness.
ponytail. And it's gone here. I swear, like they got into a fight about this. I am like 100% convinced they literally said, no, you're in the Navy. Your hair can't be like more than a buzz. Like, what are you talking about? You can't have a ponytail. And he's like, but I'm like the best Navy guy. So like I can get away with having a ponytail even though no one else is allowed to. Like, I swear they had to have gone back and forth before like literally just like shearing it off. But no, he gets rid of the ponytail, and that is at least like 15% of like getting rid of the worst of Steven Seagal here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So honestly, whatever we say about this movie, I want none of this to reflect on the director Andrew Davis. I think
No, he's
That's
made
fair.
really good movies. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Andrew Davis, J.F. Lawton, Frank Tidy, there's four editors on this?
Okay, yes, because they needed a big
Because they
team
had
of editors
so
to put
much
this movie
work
together.
to do.
They needed so many editors to put this movie together because they had a totally different movie in the first edit.
That won't surprise me.
But they couldn't get anything good out of any of the interactions between Tommy Lee Jones and Steven Seagal, except when Tommy Lee Jones is monologuing and Seagal is silent and just sits there.
I'm 100% on board with this theory. It's the only
And-
thing that makes sense.
They reuse footage in this movie. At the beginning, the newsreel about like nuclear missiles and stuff is the same footage that Tommy Lee Jones is looking at when they fired the Tomahawks. Same video.
I
when
did
the-
not catch that.
When they blow up
I
the
didn't
first
catch that either.
Tomahawk, they reuse that footage for blowing up the second Tomahawk.
I will something similar to this.
It's
something
the
I
exact
did
same
notice
explosion.
in a somewhat similar way. This stuck out to me. I had to go back like 4 times to make sure I actually saw that it happened. He's having a knife fight with a guy. This is right before he like chucks the dude in the van, so I'm pretty sure this is like in like the like machine shop like fight.
Yeah.
At one point, he legitimately like stabs a guy in the armpit, and the video just like reverses real quick, and
Yes.
then again to make him stab the guy twice.
Yes.
But it's not like he stabbed him once, and they said, for whatever reason, play that, rewind, play that, and then play it again. Ah.
Yes. No, that actually happens twice.
Oh,
in that
okay,
fight.
that's the other time.
Because I remember there was another one
I don't
that
even rewatch
was
this.
exactly a shot from, and I'm very sad that I can't remember which. It was a Jackie Chan movie. But the only reason I know that is because it was a film technique that was talked about in the Every Frame a Painting
Every
video
frame of
about
painting.
Jackie
Yep, I
Chan
knew that was coming.
and how he films action. And there's only one hit, like one, it's like an elbow hit in that fight in the machine shop, which is the weirdest fight. It's edited totally differently from every other fight
Yep.
in the movie. I
Yep.
don't know how that fits into the whole theory, but
They needed
it's
to fill
edited
time.
totally differently from the rest of the movie. The set looks very different. Things are strange. That might have been part of reshoots. That's my guess.
Well, he didn't
like,
have a
there's a
gun
guy-
either. The rest
Huh?
of the time, he's carrying a gun around these corridors. He has a MP5 or some whatever it
Yeah,
is,
he
a
turns it into a
submachine
knife
gun,
fight.
and it just doesn't. When he walks into that room, it's gone. He doesn't have it.
Well, first he just runs through the room like he's not going to fight these guys, and then he comes
tries
back
to
and
sneak
fights
stealth
them.
past him. But because he tries to stealth past him, but then a guy sees him, so he has to fight all of them.
Stealth
He
past the
failed
guy
his
like
Metal
cutting
Gear Solid,
I-beams
like,
on a
stealth check.
bandsaw.
Yeah.
Tall ways.
I'm also fairly certain at one point he has a knife and he loses it, and then just like in the next shot, like they don't show him pulling out another knife. He's just immediately like he just already has one in his hand.
No, yeah, that scene is very
There's
strange.
A lot of inconsistencies. It's still like at least the second best scene in that whole movie.
Like it was a fine
second
fight
best action
scene.
scene. Second best action scene.
That's
Yeah,
because he
it was
throws
like-
some guy's shoulder into a bandsaw.
Yeah,
It was a
that's
fine
exactly
fight
why.
scene.
You
Like
know how
I
easy
thought
I
it was
am with this.
interesting, but it was just
Yeah,
edited and shot totally differently from every other fight scene in the movie.
Yeah, no,
You
it
could-
had to be a time filler.
You could
I thought the
literally
same
have like
thing.
you could have a 15-minute scene of a person staring at the camera and saying Zachary Weinberg is the biggest, dweeb I know. But then if you shove a guy in a bandsaw after that, I'm gonna be like, all right, that's pretty dope.
It feels like it was like inserted later. I don't know. It was strange.
Yeah.
So speaking of like, cooler missions that we should have seen in this movie, Tommy Lee Jones snuck his way onto a North Korean sub, and I would personally love to know how he pulled that off.
Yes,
That would have made a better movie.
which is
Of
now
all,
staffed
of
by
all the
Italians.
nation subs, he could have stolen a Russian sub. He could have stolen, a North Korean. I'm like, how's this guy stealing a North Korean sub?
Mhm.
That's like the one sub I don't think Tommy Lee Jones can steal.
So real quick, but just while we're here, I have to give my quote that I laid down. I actually had two quotes.
Okay.
The lesser of the two is when Gary Busey's talking about filling the container or the room that has all the prisoners in it with water from the sprinklers, and he goes, "This insanity is so logical," and just cuts off. I don't know why that really struck me as being funny. But the better one is when we haven't even talked about people yet, but Raymond Cruz is in
we'll
this
talk
one
about people.
a second time
Tuco!
somehow, and has a much larger role this time around. And he goes, somebody else asks Seagal, "So what's for breakfast, Case?" And Raymond Cruz says, "Subs, man, subs." That's because they're talking about the sub that just sank. I don't know why that just struck me as being
Are we skipping
ridiculously
ahead?
stupid.
I have a favorite quote I would like to share.
There is one more thing. That
Oh no, I still want to talk about the movie.
Oh, there's
So
plenty
it's
more
not-
to say.
Oh
I just
yeah,
had-
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
While
yeah,
we were
okay,
talking
yeah.
about the
Yeah.
sub, what's
Favorite
for breakfast,
quote, go
Case?
for it.
Subs, man, subs.
Why is the sub staffed by Italians?
It's
I
a
thought
very
they
good
were.
question.
Wait, were they Italians? I thought it was in France when they intercepted it. I thought they were French in the sub.
No, the guy who's
don't
like
have
trying to
references.
fix the thing on the side is
He's
Italian.
Italian?
He's shouting in
Could not tell
Italian,
you.
and I
'Cause
think
they
the
have a
captain. I'd have to go back and
fun-
rewatch it, but I'm not going to. I think like the captain of the submarine is German or something. Like it's
Well, they just have a fun kind
Very
of GI
cosmopolitan.
Jones, like International Alliance of Terrorists.
G.I. Jones.
Did I say GI Joe? I didn't say that. Edit that out. They just have, they just have a fun like GI Joe rainbow coalition of international terrorists.
Yeah.
It's really progressive for the time.
yeah.
Germans and Italians working together. I bet the world never saw that happen.
Brilliant.
Little Axis powers joke.
You
So
had a quote.
the quote that I liked. This is when he's talking to I want to actually say her name, not just that she was Miss July 89. When he's talking to Erica Eleniak, Eleniak's character Jordan Tate. When he's talking, I'm just gonna say Jordan Tate.
I just called her
one of my
Miss
favorite
July
quotes.
in all my notes.
Oh, that's fair. Maybe I'll say Jordan Tate. Also, there's another weird plot thread there that
We haven't talked about her like at all.
We haven't talked about her at all, but also there's like a weird thing I think that was lost in reshoots there too.
Oh,
The more you talk about how thoroughly edited this movie was, the more I'm noticing. But when he's talking to Jordan, I think this is my favorite quote because it definitely I can imagine the way it was written, and it is not spoken the way it is written. This is another one of those things where delivered by a more competent action hero, I can picture why this line exists. It's not an absurd line by itself. It's just silly once it's delivered by Steven Seagal. When Jordan Tate says, so at the beginning he says, I'm just a lowly cook. I'm just a cook. And so later on, after he does some really cool thing, I forget what, he kills a guy. She says, "You're not a cook." And he goes, "Yeah, I also cook." And it's one of those that I know the line reading I'm not a professional actor, excuse me. But I'm like, I can imagine another hero where they're like, wait a minute, you're like this highly trained person. You're not a cook. And he's like, oh, well, you know, I also cook or something like that. Like, it's like a joke. But with Seagal, because he insists on saying like every line read the same way and like this cool, like kind of hushed voice, he just goes, yeah, I also cook. And like the space, the pause and the delivery of it is so weird. But I can immediately tell you how a better actor at this would deliver that line, and it like would not even stick out as weird. It would just be like witty banter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite line. But then I would like to talk about the Jordan Tate plot that I think was dropped, but you can share your quote first if you'd like.
Oh,
Since we're doing that now. You don't have to, but I just want to give you your turn.
Stranix in his, like, I think it's part of his ending monologue. He says, how hell doth quicken the spirit, which I have no idea what that is supposed to mean. But he turns poetic for a second, and I liked it.
It is pretty great. I do love that one, yeah.
That one I genuinely liked.
But even when Stranix says something weird, when Steven Seagal says something weird and incomprehensible every 10 seconds, when like Tommy Lee Jones does it, you're like, you know what, that's still kind of like funny and cool. It
like,
fleshes out his character.
Well, because the way
he's
the character is structured, like when he says something strange, it seems intentional.
Like
when he's talking
playing
to
an
the
insane person.
Well, yeah, well, and when he's talking to, there's also this thing.
Is
he's
he
like
playing an
pretending
insane
to be
person,
insane.
or is he in fact playing the most rational person out of all of us?
Well, I think he.
Stay woke.
This might have been more. I think it's still here in the movie, but I think it might have been more overt in this fictitious movie that's in my brain that may or may not have existed. Like when he first talks to all the military advisors sitting at the big Dr. Strangelove table.
Mm-hmm.
Like he gives this whole speech about all these political ideals and stuff, and they turn off the microphone. They're like, "Ha ha ha! He's acting crazy." And throughout the movie, he'll like say random crazy things, and I think he's playing a character who is not crazy, but says crazy things to project this idea that he's like lost it, but he actually hasn't.
Well, yeah, because even he does this whole rant, the revolution has begun, and then after that, he says something along the lines of like, "Oh, you think they bought that?"
Yeah.
He does. He turns off the mic and says, somebody else, or Gary Busey, I think, asks him, what do you think they're thinking right now? And he says, they probably think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
Which is a thing that Hans Gruber does in Die Hard. But anyway,
fair.
That is exactly a scene from Die Hard.
Also, so hey y'all, this is Dying Hard, the Die Hard fan cast. If we're gonna talk about bad accents in movies, Hans Gruber. It has to be my favorite of all time.
We're not talking about
of Alan Rickman doing a bad German, doing a bad American accent. Oh God, please don't kill! It's amazing. I love it so much. Okay, back to
anyway,
Steven Seagal.
Back to the movie we actually came here to talk about.
So I think Jordan Tate has that character has a significant plot line that is hinted at but not addressed. So the one thing while I'm watching, I'm just very confused. I can't actually figure out why she's there.
That's what I was thinking the entire time. Her character
very...
is only there because Seagal needed a female lead.
Well, so hear me out. I think they did have a reason that got lost somewhere. And it's from one line that I literally had to, after watching the movie, go back and like confirm I actually heard. Because like it just was Berenstain-Bears effect, Mandela effect, like not existing for me. So like, the two options you would suspect are either like she's there to be like a hostage or something, or she's there because she's secretly in on the terrorist plot. She's not in on the terrorist plot, so I'm like, the terrorists knew she was there. Tommy Lee Jones is like coaching her on, hey, you'll do great, like you do this with your eyes closed. And then
They invited her onto the boat.
She came on the boat with them.
Yeah, so, she came in on the terrorist helicopter.
She came in on the terrorist helicopter, and then like later on when they first learn about Casey Ryback like trapped in the freezer. Oh hey, he had to take his shoes off because he was nervous off the plane, Die Hard. In this case, he's locked in a freezer. Because Steven Seagal would not get sick on an airplane.
No, never.
But I'm losing my train of thought because I keep trying to get all these sick digs in. My come up and strikes yet again.
Miss July.
But Miss July, who I would love to make Mrs. July. I'm sorry, Sarah, don't listen to this. So, but whenever they learn about him, they make a comment like, "Oh, there's no more surprises we need to know about, huh?" And the guy says, "Nope, there's not." And I kind of thought, oh, maybe that's referencing this other one, Miss July, that they forgot to secure her. She's still inside the cake. That doesn't really come up again. They don't really acknowledge her. They don't care about her. They don't care that she's on the boat and helping Seagal. Like that's never a thing. But so I'm figuring out, why is she here? Like, plot reasons, what is she here for? There's one line in the war room when they're first laying out, like, okay, so SEAL Team 5 is going to invade the ship. And if that doesn't work, we have to blow up the whole thing. And one of the Dr. Strangelove Chief War Room guys leans to another one, and he's like, and you know what that means, right? And he goes, I do. And someone leans over to him, and they go, we'll do our best to get her off. Like, I think she originally was of some importance, like a daughter or something to one of the people in the war room. And they brought her on to be like like the terrorists would have brought her on. Oh, we know Miss July is like the CIA dude's daughter, so we have her as leverage. Like, they're not going to want to blow up the ship with her on, or they're not going to want her to get killed.
I like that idea, but the problem is
they just don't acknowledge her at all.
I like that idea, but I'm pretty sure when he said something about her, he was talking about the ship.
No, okay, hold up. Let me find this.
I might have to rewatch it, but that's how I know the line you're talking about, and that's how I understood it. So he was talking about the ship.
I don't know about
their concern was more about all of the soldiers. Like when he says, you know what that means, their concern was about the soldiers that were. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm sorry. I'm not part of the armed services. I don't know terminology. That's my fault. I apologize. The Marines, the sailors that were held hostage on the ship. That was the threat.
Okay, yeah, 51 minutes and 10 seconds. We'll have no alternative but to launch an airstrike and destroy the Missouri. You know what that means. We'll get her back for you.
Yeah, the ship.
Tell me how we'll get her back for you means the Missouri.
The ship back from the terrorists. No, the threat is to blow it up. You know what that means. Meaning, if they blow it up, they lose it. The alternative being the Marines will get her back for you, so we don't have to blow it up.
Maybe. I think Zach's theory has merit.
I think my theory doesn't have as much merit as Aaron's, but I think mine deserves a little goddamn respect in here, Hans.
I said I like the theory, but I'm pretty sure this is what it is. So my theory deserves no respect?
No, it doesn't. Tell me why Jordan's character is on the
God.
Boat. Not Jordan's character. Tell me why the character Jordan.
Because Steven Seagal needed a female lead to show her boobs in the one scene. Like, that was the whole reason. I can guarantee you that was the reason.
Mean, that's what I have in my notes.
Because he's an awful human being. She does not need to be there. Her part was written in because that's how his movies are.
I will say, so there was one like throwaway scene with her in it that made me think that she had a different role in this movie in an earlier edit. I can't fit it into like my general theory. There might have been like a B plot with her that we just never see, that just got cut out almost entirely, except for maybe that line and one moment where he frees a group of sailors who are like trapped in their bunk. Mm-hmm. He like cuts open the door and he kicks it open, and they all come out and they find guns somehow. That's not explained. And there's one guy, he's like the laundry guy on the ship.
That's right.
And he doesn't know how to use guns. Like, he doesn't want to join the fight. Okay. He's like, no, I'm just going to like sit in my room and I'm going to be out of this one. And so she, who has been terrified and very reticent to even like think about guns this whole time, is like, I'm going to fight. And so he feels emasculated. And so he turns to her and asks her, like, how does this thing work? Talking about the gun in front of him. And so she, like, does this thing, which happens in a lot of action movies, where someone shows off by, like, reloading a pistol, which is not a complicated process, but they do it in a way that they're, like, smug and they know what they're doing. But that's the only time she seems confident around a firearm throughout the entire movie.
That's not true. She shoots the one guy that has Seagal pinned down. She shoots him,
but she like does it and is like immediately overcome with her womanly emotions and is like crying about it. Like she did what the evil thing she had to do. Yes.
Yeah, he comforts
don't gaslight me this entire
podcast. I'm not gaslighting you about anything. I'm giving you my opinions, but apparently my opinions aren't valid.
Well, which also, okay, if we're going to keep making comparisons to Die Hard, is also how Die Hard ends. That someone screws up the courage to kill a man.
Yeah, basically.
I shot a kid.
That's not how he delivers that line. I want to make that clear.
I know.
Hold on. Oh, wait. I just found it.
Okay. I don't remember her being, like, weepy and stuff, but she wasn't happy about it. Also, she shoots him, like, with the gun from the hip.
Okay, so he's laying there, And actually, I'm not gonna lie, right before that, it's maybe one of my favorite shots in the movie is the dude, I can't remember his character's name, but like he's standing there like, it's a shame you're not cooking for us, and like they have these like spotlights like behind him. It's actually really pretty cool.
Well,
like, pretty
we'll talk about all these actors who were in this movie because he was one of my favorites.
3 times.
Yeah, because it's set to semi-automatic, which they make a big point of for some reason.
They do. Steven Seagal does make a big point of that.
Really weird reason.
Okay, she's not actually as crying and weeping.
No, she goes right to him to like help him up.
She's helping out. No, okay, but she is like, she's not full on weeping, but she is like,
she's shaking,
like shaking, and yeah.
Okay, we'll meet in the
It's
middle.
not like she's perfectly trained killer, like
No.
confident right there.
No,
well,
absolutely.
Yeah,
not.
well, it's like the end of Die Hard. He kills the secondary villain, and then he has to be like helped to put his gun away.
Although
Same thing
yeah,
happens
basically.
with Miss July.
Although I will say this is another instance of Zach receiving his comeuppance. So
Mhm.
Come up.
something I know I've learned about myself while watching this movie, unfortunately, is I am normally pretty good at watching movies. I have a nice, got a developed critical eye and a honed understanding of film and film form.
Mhm.
But it is very easy to get the better of me. I've realized now that if I think I'm better than a movie, that's when the movie will, Aikido judo flip me and like, get the, when I think I have the best of them, that's exactly when they get the best of me.
Hubris.
Be like, actually, you don't know as much about movies as you think. Or it'll really just get me, be like, you're not better than me. As soon as I get smug and I think I'm better than a movie, that is my, like an Aesop fable or like a Greek, legend, like a Greek god. That my hubris is my downfall.
Lucky for you, I think this is the only movie out of all 50 that we're going to be watching that
I mean,
might
maybe.
happen.
But it's because it's similar, like what Aaron's saying. So I've never even touched a gun in my life. I do 2 things. I don't date musicians and I don't kill people. And like, she emasculates the man, and it's very funny because it's the 90s and it's very funny for a woman to emasculate a man. She like, cocks the gun, real confidently gives it to him. And I'm like, sitting here, all of a sudden she's so gung-ho with the gun. Like, what next? She's going to be dating a musician. I'm better than you, movie. And then later on, she kills that guy. She's, shaking about it, but she's going to help Seagal. And he makes the comment like, I bet next you'll be dating a musician. And I'm like, F you, movie. I'm better than you. Don't give me this. And that happened. I can't remember. There were 2 or 3 times that happened where I'm like, oh, let me make a smug comment. And then the movie like makes sense. I'm like, shut up. I didn't care anyway. I'm not mad.
Oh my gosh, wait. So I have the IMDb page open, and it's showing like a trailer for the movie. And the first quote is from a review of the movie from some newspaper, and it says Die Hard on a boat. It's in the trailer for the film.
I have no original thought. I get it.
Oh no, it's for the trailer for the VHS home video release of the film. I'm sorry, let me correct myself.
When was this movie released?
1992.
Damn, Zach, you weren't even born yet, and they already had this idea.
I know, I realize.
I want to talk about actors in this movie. Are there any other comments on the movie in general? Oh, I do have one more comment on the movie in general, but I'm going to interject into my own interjection. So if you look at the poster for this film, you will see that it is a big Steven Seagal head, and he's in his dress whites, and there's
i.e. a Steven Seagal head.
The boat.
Is it the fact that he never wears these whites?
He never wears the dress whites throughout the movie, even though at the beginning of the movie they make a point about the captain wants him to wear his dress whites, and he doesn't, and then the captain dies. And so at the end of the movie, for the captain's funeral, you're like, well, he's going to wear... No, he doesn't.
Well, okay, to be fair, though, I also don't think he even wore these dress whites for this poster. Like, this is a head photoshopped under another person's body, very clearly. I had the same thought. I'm like, he literally... At the end, he wears something. I don't know if it's his exact ones. He wears something to the funeral. Something, like, the closest he gets to this outfit is at the funeral.
Yeah.
But no, I had that same thought. Like, he doesn't wear that. It's like similar to when I watched Ready or Not, and the whole poster is Samara Weaving with like the shotgun on the cover. And hey, what's up, everybody? This is the Ready or Not fan cast. Samara Weaving, please come on the pod. You were great in Babylon. But she doesn't get to use the shotgun in the movie. It's like she grabs it and she does her cool suit up like badass armor scene.
Yep.
And then they're like, oh, it's like a fake shotgun, and she doesn't actually get to use it. This is like the same thing. Like they sold this movie on literally Steven Seagal wearing a Navy uniform, and he doesn't even wear the Navy uniform. So real quick, my general little commentary I had on the movie that I haven't found a place to fit in here yet. Just I love Tommy Lee Jones. He's great. That's my comment. So I thought it was kind of interesting while I was watching this. I also had an every frame painting flashback when he's handcuffed at the beginning and he escapes from the freezer and kills the two guys. Because this is something also talked about in how Jackie Chan does action comedy, where he often starts at a disadvantage. Like, you know, he's handcuffed to the steering wheel in Rush Hour. He has the bomb in his mouth in Rush Hour 3 or 4. And, you know, this is the thing you see in other action movies too. Like Bruce Willis is barefoot, so then he's like susceptible to the glass. Like, the hero is given some kind of weakness, so then it's more satisfying when they overcome it. And I kind of thought they were doing a similar thing here with him handcuffed, but then he's just out of the handcuffs in like in 5 seconds. Because he's too cool to be in handcuffs. And like he could do like some cool Aikido stuff with handcuffs still on. It's considering half of his moves are like just thrusting both hands out together to kind of lightly tap you in the face. Like I don't know why he couldn't do some Aikido in handcuffs, but he didn't. If you count the leading officer, if you count his good friend that made him his personal cook, this movie has his signature bloody death 21 minutes and 28 seconds in. If you don't count him, the first person kind of in his immediate like friend group, his first peer that dies is 1 hour and 7 minutes in. So we've gone from like the fastest partner death to actually a fairly restrained partner death. They talk about how he's the coolest, the SEAL that was trained, whatever, and he's the only reason he lost his rank is because he stood up to some scum. His SEAL training apparently means holding 2 submachine guns akimbo crossed over each other running down a hallway.
And that magically finds its targets so easily.
And never runs out of ammo, even though he talks about how precious bullets are. You need to fire semi-auto. He just runs through, arms crossed, full auto in the building. When the guy's on top of the subdeck and like shoots a bazooka from it, that was actually pretty dope. So another small theory I have. Anytime there's like a cooking scene, like at the beginning when he's like dicing vegetables and then at one point he like cuts something and then like throws the knife, all of those are like weirdly tightly shot on just his hands. I'm like 80% sure they had like a hand double, like a knife, like a cooking hand doubles because Seagal couldn't do it. Because he'll be standing there being like, I'm the best cook.
Wait, they get Bobby Flay to come in and do the knife scenes. He's on
I think so. Because he's talking about how he's the best cook and everyone else is talking about how he's the best cook. He has a very disgusting looking bolognese. And then also like they just show his hand chopping the knife and that's it.
No, it's really funny you say that.
Wait, my last thing.
What? Go ahead.
I think Steven Seagal makes for the most convincing jarhead possible because his head literally looks like a jar. Okay, I'm done.
No, it's funny you say that about the him chopping up vegetables and stuff because I had the exact same thought. Only because I specifically remember it reminding me of like when in a movie or a TV show they show someone playing the piano and they're moving their hands around, but they they shoot it in such a way that you shoot it in such a way they shoot it in such a way that you can't actually see their hands, but then they cut to a shot of hands playing on the piano and it's obviously not their hands. It was the exact same thing. I thought there's absolutely no way that this is actually Steven Seagal chopping these vegetables on this chopping board.
100%.
And it's such a weird thing to cut. Like it's such a weird thing to do that way. But yeah, it's just odd.
No, 100%. I like the piano comparison. All right. That's any other wrapping up closing thoughts just on the general movie itself?
I have one thing that I haven't found a spot to put it in anywhere.
Okay.
Well, I told you about this yesterday. It was the only thing I said because I had to get it off my chest. It was my this movie is riddled with problems. I stand by my thought of it is a good movie. It would be much better if it just didn't star Steven Seagal. Like
that's fair.
I think a lot of the problems with the plot issues would have been fixed because his ego wouldn't have been involved and they would have just had a better actor to deliver those lines. But the one thing that threw me off more than anything else is like the penultimate, not fight scene between him and Tommy Lee Jones, but the scene where they're trying to sink the sub because all the missiles have been offloaded onto the sub.
Yes.
Right?
Oh,
and
okay.
the sub is still above the water because they're trying to fix the whatever it's called, fin, whatever it is. So they look at the 5-inch cannons and say, do we have any ammo for those? And the one guy says, no, we just have like the sparklers or whatever for the party. So he turns to the old guy who they found in that bunk room and he is the gunnery chief from way back in the ship's heyday. And it would be such a cool line to say, like, hey, you know the ship better than anyone else here. Do those still work? And point to the big cannons that have since been like deactivated, whatever. But he doesn't say that. He looks to the guy and what is it? I had it written down. He says it really patronizing. He says, "Oh, yeah, where is it?"
It's like condescending.
Instead, I wrote this down. Instead of, do you know how to work those or anything? He says, he looks at him really in such a patronizing way and says, you see those? We still got shells for those. And it's like a statement, not a question. It's not, it could have been such a cool moment. Like, do those still work? Like when Jay in Men in Black says, hey, old guys, do those still work? Like, that's such a great scene.
That would mean that Steven Seagal's character would have to rely on the intelligence and wisdom of another character. Which is not allowed to happen in a Steven Seagal movie. I
guess you're right. And that was that it further ruined it because when they're loading those, it's not the gunnery chief, the guy that's supposed to be the expert on the ship. It's not him telling him how to load the cannons. It's Steven Seagal giving everyone else instruction on how to load these cannons.
Yep.
And it just doesn't, it was another moment where I thought this could have been such a cool scene. But because it involved Steven Seagal, it just rips you right out of that fiction.
Seagal
and
must
ruins
be in charge of the situation.
Yeah, and that sucks. It makes no sense. The whole point of having the gunnery chief there was that he was supposed to be the expert. He was the one who knows the ship better than anyone else. And then they just ignore him. It's just so frustrating to watch.
He just stands off to the side and says some little lines every now and again. Oh, be careful.
And it's just so irritating.
Yeah, no, like I said, they managed to just edit around Seagal as much as possible and truly do the best with what they have. I fully believe that this is the best given all the variables going in. The major variables, if you could just replace Steven Seagal, just have somebody else in there. So that's kind of how I justified it. I thought the movie's pretty good, and I feel sick to my stomach saying that, but the way I clear my conscience to sleep well at night is but the worst part of it is Steven Seagal. Okay, cool,
yeah,
we're good.
Yep, that's fair. No,
absolutely. It's similar to the, I also cook line. He just couldn't say it in the way an action hero would.
Yeah.
He comes as close as he actually does this can kind of make you believe he could be just a legitimate bona fide action hero, but he just fumbles it in some way because his own ego,
Yep.
In many ways, he and I we're not so different. I mean, in a lot of ways, we're very different. I've never, human trafficked anyone or challenged a person to put me in a chokehold until I my pants. In many ways, Steven Seagal and I are different. And let me be very clear, in 99.9% of ways, we're different.
You haven't left your current wife, but stayed married to her while you married your next wife?
Not yet. Well,
not yet.
I do have that wife back in Japan I never told you guys about. But... in this one way, when your own ego becomes your own downfall. In his case, every single movie he was in and every single line he delivers. In my case, feeling vaguely smug about subpar movies that then get the better of me. I have one other comment about the movie. Erica Eleniak as Jordan Tate. I do like that in real life she was Miss July 89. So in the movie she's also Miss July 89. I think
was it really?
That's a fun little detail. She was real life Miss July 89. So
that's awesome. I didn't know that.
89. That's great. No, every other character in every way is actually pretty chill. She gives a great performance.
Since we're talking about actors and actresses who did other stuff,
yes.
way better.
She was the girl in E.T. that Elliot kisses in class.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
She was the young girl that he kisses, towards the climactic part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
With, the frogs and, the dissection stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
She also did other stuff, too. But
she also did other stuff, too. Like these other people who also did other stuff, too. So
Hollywood
some of the
celebrities, where are they? Do they know things? Let's find out.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of characters in this movie who were just background characters who didn't do much in this movie, who later went on to do pretty famous things. So Troy Evans, who played Granger in this movie, who I don't think is ever actually named in the movie. He's one of the crew who follows Steven Seagal around. He's one of the guys in the bunk room who follows Steven Seagal around. He went on to be in 129 episodes of ER.
Nice.
So good for him. And of course, there's like Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey, who are massively
Yeah.
famous, and everybody knows them. So
Well,
talk
and
about them.
even like Hans talked about before, you have Raymond Cruz, you have Tuco from Breaking Bad.
Yeah, so Raymond Cruz,
playing a big
Tuco
part
from
here.
Breaking Bad, he's in here. Glenn
Better Call Saul.
This is the
Morshower.
second. Is this the second or third Seagal movie he's been in?
This is the. Ooh, I want to say second, but it might be
Second
the
that I can
third.
think of.
I think it might be second. I thought we talked about him being a big character in another, but I think this is the second.
Yeah, he was in Out for Justice.
Yeah.
And Under Siege, so this is the second.
Okay.
Yeah. We also have Glenn Morshower, who is more famous than I thought he was, because
Who's
his
that?
characters from different movies kind of run together in my head because he plays military guys in like every movie he's ever in. So he plays General Morshower in the Transformers movies, which he just
Yeah.
uses his real name in the Transformers movies.
And he is, and for point of reference in this one, he's kind of like Gary Busey before he's revealed to be evil, like really hates Ryback. This
Yes.
guy also just like hates Ryback. He's like with Gary Busey on it. He's like, he's the one that's like, put him in the meat locker.
Yeah.
That's not his accent. I don't know why I use that accent.
Looks like he was in Star Trek too.
Well, we'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
He also plays Colonel Hendry in X-Men First Class. He plays
Oh,
military
okay.
guy in Air Force One. He is also in
Military
Godzilla
guy.
'98, which there are a couple actors from this movie who were in the 1998 version of Godzilla.
Huh.
Huh.
That Godzilla.
And he also does the voice for Shepard in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 2022. Not the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2,
Sure.
but the new 2022 version of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2.
Oh, he was in Pearl Harbor? That movie sucked.
My favorite, because it kind of ruined the movie for me, but in a fun way.
Wait,
is
actually, real
What?
quick. Glenn
What?
Morshower was also in Delta Farce.
Oh my
starring
gosh,
Bill
yes.
Engvall, Larry the Cable Guy,
he was.
and Danny Trejo.
That's right.
And after
Oh, and
Earth,
Danny
So
Trejo.
Blue-
We're back to Danny Trejo.
Oh yeah, back to Danny Trejo. It all connects.
I have his book now. Trejo's
Oh,
Tacos.
great.
His cookbook.
Yeah, sorry, not his book, his cookbook.
You'll
His
have to tell us how the
his
tacos-
tell-all Steven Seagal memoir.
But the one of the actors who was in here who plays so this is Calm Meaney, who in Under Siege.
I knew this
he
was who you were gonna.
plays-
I knew it.
Yeah, he plays Stranix's right hand man throughout the whole thing. But in the whole movie, I just called him Chief O'Brien because he plays the Chief O'Brien, the teleportation deck officer.
Yep.
Sorry, he's enlisted.
Yes.
The technician from Star Trek: The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine.
Yep.
And also just apparently considered, of his time, one of Ireland's greatest actors.
Yeah, I mean, he was in Next Gen and Deep Space Nine. He was great.
Oh yeah. That means you're one of Ireland's greatest actors because
That alone.
those two. That's why.
And then there are some. If people remembered the names of stunt performers, some of probably the most prolific stunt
do.
performers in the world, I imagine, are in this movie. So George Chung, who is one of the assistants to the scientist guy who does all the computers on the ship.
Yeah.
He has a bajillion uncredited roles in lots of very famous movies. He did stunts for the Rush Hour movies, Memoirs of a Geisha, Godzilla '98, there it is again, Mars Attacks, Escape from LA, Batman
Mars
Forever,
Attacks.
he was a stunt performer in a whole bunch of famous movies.
But does this movie have Gene LaBelle, who put Steven Seagal in the headlock one time so hard that Steven Seagal crapped his pants and passed out? Gene LaBelle in this movie?
I don't think so.
It's not a good movie if Gene LaBelle's not in it.
Well, and then there's one more stunt performer I want to mention because I was looking through everyone in this movie and seeing did anybody in this movie go on to do bigger and better things. And there was one guy that I found who is he's a stunt performer and sometimes stunt coordinator, Frank Ferrara, which I need to start diving into the world of stunt performers because this guy is prolific. So before he did Under Siege, he was the stunt coordinator for The Last Dragon. He did stunts for Money Pit, RoboCop, Last Rites, 40 episodes.
Wait, the original RoboCop?
The original RoboCop.
Nice.
Dang.
He was the stunt coordinator for 40 episodes of The Equalizer. He did stunts on Ghostbusters 2. He was a stunt performer in Out for Justice. He was also in Hook and Home Alone 2.
Did
Dang.
Did he do stunt stuff for Ghostbusters 1 or just Ghostbusters 2?
As far as I could find, just Ghostbusters 2.
Okay, because if he did stunt work on the first Ghostbusters, I was gonna make a joke about like, did he do the stunt work of the time that like the ghost gives like Ray the blowjob one in his sleep? But I even though he was in Ghostbusters 2, which does not have a scene where a ghost gives a character a blowjob, I still found a way to reference the scene in Ghostbusters 1 where a ghost gives a character a blowjob.
Yes.
When you found a way, that's a really you forced it, maybe.
Real subtly.
You didn't really find
perfectly
it.
executed. They had no way of seeing it coming.
Frank
Except
Ferrara.
mention the Ghost BJ scene.
Frank Ferrara, after Under Siege, went on to do Leon the Professional, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Independence Day, Lolita, Godzilla 98. He was the stunt coordinator for the Thomas Crown Affair, the coordinator for American Psycho. He did stunts for Requiem for a Dream, The Royal Tenenbaums, A Beautiful Mind, Catch Me If You Can, Too Fast, Too Furious, Bad Boys 2, Transporter 2, The Sopranos, Bourne Ultimatum, I Am Legend, and he was a stunt driver on Wanted, and he was the stunt coordinator for the 2009 Sherlock Holmes.
Hey, it's really a shame that Zach's facial your motions right now aren't going to translate into audio.
Wait, did you say something specifically not just stunt coordinator? Did you say something about driving for the movie Wanted?
Yeah, he was a stunt driver.
That means there's a
For
very
Wanted.
good chance he did like the stunt where like the car's driving and like supposedly Angelina Jolie like opens the door and like whips it around and like just catches the guy like in the car and he's in the passenger seat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very bad movie, but that's a very cool thing that happens in this movie. If he's at all responsible for that, I'm giving my man props just for that alone.
Mm-hmm. But this guy was and was in like some incredibly famous movies.
Yeah.
He was
Like-
not credited for any stunts in Under Siege.
Nice. But he was in some way responsible for like 15 of like my top 100 movies.
Yes.
Nice.
And there are tons and tons of stunt performers in this movie. And there were like lots of stunt performers who are stunt performers professionally. Did stunts
Good,
in lots of
glad.
movies. And in this movie are just actors, didn't do any stunts.
Nice.
Or at least not credited for doing any stunts. Which was very strange.
So he kind of filled out like the extras cast with like stunt performers.
Which is something that we talked about
Yeah.
in a previous movie, that there are lots of, in these movies, there are lots of like stunt performers who are asked to do non-stunt roles. And I don't know why that is. I think
Well, it's because they
Steven
have to have a
Seagal.
reason to be on screen. It's the same thing like in the SNL episode, the last skit didn't have any SNL cast in it. It was all stunt performers that they had to hire on who had to act because they had to do something in the scene.
mhm.
Yeah, that's fair. This is unrelated to people's performances, but
Yeah.
I will say it is actually kind of funny in the same way that people will reference how the first the non-James Gunn, the first Suicide Squad film is technically Oscar nominated Suicide Squad because it was nominated for like makeup and costumes.
Mhm.
Under Siege earned 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Sound Effects Editing and Best Sound. So
Really?
What?
none of those even touch Seagal. Like he's not listed on like any of the Academy Award nominations. It's like, the sound scene, but Best Sound Effects Editing and Best Sound. It did not win either, but technically
yeah.
this is 2-time Academy Award nominee.
What else was nominated for sound that year? Because I feel like they might have been scraping the bottom of the barrel. Like, I don't want to throw the sound designer under the bus.
Maybe.
Because
I
I don't
also-
like doing that to like artists who do things like that. But also, like the knife fight at the end of this movie is very.
Oh my god!
It sounds terrible.
It is the worst. It's
The explosions
so...
are pretty good.
I
But the
have to
knife
point
fight
out
at the end
though,
is bad.
you had to mention there that none of those touched Steven Seagal. That
Yes.
should have been obvious because
Well-
Steven Seagal's only awards and nominations that he has listed anywhere that I have been able
Are
to
they
find
from, like,
are
Russia?
for worst actor, worst picture, worst
Oh.
director, worst supporting actor, worst picture, worst screen couple, worst original song, and worst actor.
Got it. I thought you were going to mention like some kind of award that Putin gave him. So at the 65th Academy Awards for Best Sound Editing, there were 3 nominees. It looks like that's pretty consistent, that there's generally 3 nominees.
Mhm.
Under Siege, Aladdin, and Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh.
And Bram Stoker's Dracula was the winner at the 65th Academy Awards for Best Sound. there were 5 nominees: Unforgiven, Under Siege, A Few Good Men, Aladdin, and The Last of the Mohicans, and the winner was The Last of the Mohicans.
Well, that makes sense, yeah.
So it's not, I wouldn't say absolutely scraping the bottom of the
No.
barrel, but I can understand how it, like, fit, you know.
Yeah.
It's not like, you know, any of those movies that you particularly remember for amazing sound design or sound work.
Unlike Wreck-It Ralph, which I think has some of the best sound design in movies, but that's another episode.
Ooh, can we have an episode where we talk about Wreck-It Ralph and then Wreck-It Ralph 2? Because I got some stuff to say about Wreck-It Ralph 2. Very little good. Mostly bad.
Well, if the
I love
members of the
Wreck-It Ralph.
Patreon want to get together and vote on what the next group of films will be...
You're speaking fictional. You're not even...
If you want to talk sequels,
If all
just
the
wait.
Glimglorms and the Schlimslams get together and, you know, they unite all of Hypnopeptia, then, you know, it'll happen.
If you want to talk sequels, just wait until we get to Under Siege 2. Because we were talking about how Under Siege
There's a
has
sequel to
You mean
this?
Under Siege
weirdly...
2 Dark Territory?
Yeah. We were
Yeah.
talking about how like the one we just watched has a weirdly like good poster, like ignoring the fact that it doesn't actually
Yeah,
match up with
yeah.
anything in the movie. It
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
looks like a
yeah.
well done poster because it
It
almost
actually
makes
lies
him...
to you about what the movie's about, but...
Huh?
It kind of lies to you about what the movie's about without actually communicating anything about the movie.
Oh, definitely. No, it doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the movie itself. But as a poster, it's very good. Have either of you seen the poster for Under Siege 2 Dark Territory?
No.
I have, real quick. Did you know
Because-
that Under Siege 2 Dark Territory was co-written by Matt Reeves, the director of The Batman starring Robert Pattinson?
I did not know that, actually.
Okay,
That's
anyway, I'm sorry
a
to
bummer
interrupt. That's
almost,
just
but-
wild.
No, but here, take a look at this poster because it is just awful.
Oh no.
I do like that this poster, I will say, is probably more honest because I think you know more of what you're getting into from this poster than you do from the first Under Siege poster.
You know what? You're probably right, but
And
it's-
I have not seen this movie. I've not read a synopsis. All I know about is the poster. I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction here, having no knowledge of this movie outside of the poster. I'm going to assume that, like, they just kind of unceremoniously drop Miss July 89. Like, that she just doesn't appear and also isn't, like, that... I'm going to go ahead and make the guess that they kind of get together, or it's implied that, you know, he kisses her at least at the end of the first Under Siege, and then she's just not brought up at all in Under Siege 2. That's my prediction. I also predict this movie will be a lot worse, but I don't get
No.
points for that one. That's
I have
the
a
free
feeling-
space on the bingo card.
I have a feeling that you are 100% correct about that, because it seems to me, again, I don't know anything about this movie. I haven't read the synopsis either. Just from looking at the movie poster, though, and just knowing what I know about this man's film career, I think the only thing linking Under Siege 2 Dark Territory to Under Siege is the character name that Steven Seagal has. I'm
Probably.
pretty sure that's the only thing that's
Probably.
going to stay the same.
Although I do like that the first Under Siege is very much defined by being on a boat. This one on the poster, he's clinging to the side of a train. So I like that they're basically doing like a Speed and like Speed 2 cruise control thing.
But
where
in
they
reverse,
they tie their well, no, that the first one's like good, and then the second. Well, I like in the fact that Speed 2 is on a boat. I just mean that so much of it is tied to the location, and the location is like a vehicle.
yeah.
That like Speed 1 bus, good. Speed 2 cruise control boat, dumbest thing you've ever seen. I think this is gonna be pretty similar. Oh no, they hijacked a train. Oh, what if they go to the one location, the one direction the train can go? That's my prediction.
Oh, I do want to say one thing about my watching experience with this movie.
Ooh, actually, I forgot to touch my watching experience. Thank you for reminding me.
Of course, but I'm going to go first.
Oh, yeah, of course. Be my guest.
So I have a Google Smart TV that you can like talk to. And so
Wow.
I
Aren't you fancy?
said Under Siege, and then so it pops up with like ways that you can watch Under Siege, and it had the poster there, Steven Seagal's face, right there, and it said free with Amazon Prime. I was like, oh, okay, cool, and so I just clicked that, and then it started showing me a 6-part documentary about siege warfare
Nice.
called Under Siege.
You actually, I
It's
think
funny
it
you
would've
bring this up because I had the exact same experience.
I think it actually would have been funny if you just watched that and you just came to the podcast like didn't acting like you thought that was what we were supposed to watch.
I
That'd be a really
almost
funny
did.
bit.
I
If you're just
almost
like-
watched it.
But then also you don't watch the movie Under Siege starring Steven Seagal. You come here and you're like, yeah, I don't know, there's stuff about like castles and like flinging like cows over like, you know, to give them, you know, infectious diseases, and
But
that was pretty wild.
I will
know.
say,
I didn't even notice where Seagal was in this movie.
It's by far the best Seagal movie because it didn't have Seagal in it.
I will say, so hey, if anyone's listening, go watch the Under Siege
Hey, nobody's
documentary
listening.
series. It's free if you have Amazon Prime. And it's 6 episodes. It has 4.5 stars on Amazon Prime. Only 6 people have rated it, but I'm sure they're very intelligent.
I wonder
it's
how
probably
many of
very
those 6
interesting.
people are people that were looking for Steven Seagal's Under Siege and ended up watching this instead because
Well,
it
they
was
gave
better.
it a good review, so they were happy to get the wrong movie. They said, actually, you know what, this was a better call. Thanks.
Well,
people.
and the genres do say suspense and drama, which is,
Interesting.
those are pretty good things. And so when I started, the first 60 seconds of this documentary series were pretty good before I figured out that, wait, this isn't the Steven Seagal movie. Because I thought maybe it just started out with like this really quick thing about siege warfare for some reason. Like he was making a very literal...
It's like how it starts with the Arthur Miller quote in Out for Justice.
Yeah. I was like, oh, maybe he's trying out that thing that he did before. No.
Well, this is conceptually adventurous.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, he's being a little artsy here. Nah.
Could you actually find me the exact second you made it too before realizing it wasn't the right movie?
It was like 30 seconds in.
Nice. Although now I have I'm picturing a very funny bit in my head where you ask Google like, hey, can you show me Under Siege? And it goes like, okay, here's Under Siege. And you go, hey, can you show me Under Siege 2? And it just goes, no.
No.
It's like, are you sure? Are you really sure? Or any of his other 49 movies. Like, hey, can I watch Out for Justice? And it goes, you shouldn't, actually.
I'm just worried that, like, all
I'm
the
sorry,
internet
Gabe, I can't do
tracking stuff that tracks everything I do online
will
will think I'm a really big Steven Seagal fan.
No, it's irreparably damaged beyond repair in my browsing history now.
What did you want to say about your watching experience?
I just wanted to say, because I think, you know, the format of the podcast is interesting in that it is a recorded conversation somewhat emulating the radio medium, but also I think it's useful to use as a time capsule. So I'm going to provide myself a little time capsule.
Ooh,
and then when we finally get one viewer 30 years from now when I'm listening to my own time capsule, it's just a very interesting time in my life. So right
I just
now,
want to applaud the setup and the payoff on that one. That was pretty good.
I'm glad. I'll subscribe to the Patreon then too.
Thank
when
you.
I come back to relive these precious memories.
Amen.
Of my white man quarter life crisis, where I inevitably finally make a podcast with my friends. And of course, it's about hate watching movies because, again, not an original thought up here. Nobody's done that before. Watching bad movies and talking about it. Oh, you're a trailblazer.
But has anybody ever watched all of the Steven Seagal movies and talked about every single
I did
one?
look it up. I saw I could find 2 or 3 other podcasts that seem to be watching Seagal movies, but none of them made it entirely through.
Ooh.
Well,
I
there
think
we
there was
go.
one
That's
called-
our goal.
I think it was called like Flock of Seagulls or something.
That's pretty good.
They made it
That's
pretty far.
pretty
They had a
good.
good amount of episodes. I want to say they made it.
Hey, I
like,
gotta
30
look
in,
that up.
but I don't think they made it all the way. So this is our challenge.
This is our
We're
challenge.
taking you on, Flock of Seagulls.
We're taking on the flock of seagulls.
We're coming for you. Coming for that crown.
Coming for
And
you.
when I shoot, I don't miss. But right now, my wife and I are in the middle of moving apartments. Right now, I'm recording this in the new apartment, and also I watched this in the new apartment. So right now, we're still primarily living out of the older one. That's where most of our stuff is. So our new one is like literally the basics. It's like my computer desk. It's like a half-assembled IKEA bed frame. And so we have in the living room, we have our couch. We have a TV that I got from Hans because he just upgraded his TV setup. So he's got an amazing, 5.1 Dolby Atmos approved sound system with like a nice, 4K LG OLED TV to watch the remainder of Steven Seagal's filmography once he has the setup, and hopefully some good movies too. But on the setup I was watching this on, it was like the TV just kind of on, not a real TV stand, just like something that I'm purposing as like a TV stand, just the sound bar on the floor.
On the floor.
Just laying on the floor, and just like the spider web of like cables that are not managed at all, just like all plugged into like one poor surge protector. Yes, that's the podcast. Good job.
Keep going.
And so it is very much like when we're actually moved in, because I have a lovely wife that actually cares about like the place that we live in and how it looks and feels and makes you feel about yourself. It will be decorated and have aesthetic and be a nice, pleasant, comforting environment. Right now, it just like is the bachelor apartment. It is like the meme, like, dudes will have an apartment like this and say it's okay. With just like, the TV on like a bin and like, just wires on the floor and like, a random like PS5 that's not even plugged in. And I actually think you have some filmmakers who go into depth, like, they've crafted these movies over years, so they're very particular about how you watch it. Christopher Nolan, he wants you to watch it like in the IMAX, like, that's the real experience. He cries every time he learns of a person watching it on their phone. That many people, many auteurs many creators want you to watch it under the best possible settings. They applaud the theatrical experience. I think like a barely furnished like bachelor apartment with like the soundbar on the floor and the TV on like a makeshift stand, like that is the intended viewing experience for this movie. Like while I'm watching, I'm just like, you know what? This is the most Under Siege starring Steven Seagal that it gets. Like I am watching this in the utmost of conditions. Like
drinking some Miller High Life while you do that?
I did not have the champagne of beers while I was drinking this. No, I was 90% of the way there. But while I was watching, I had that thought, just like, you know what? Yeah, this is really the only correct way to watch this movie. It doesn't deserve any better or any worse. So that was my viewing experience. Also, my wife does. I don't know if any of you fellas know what the married life is like.
No, actually.
Pause for laugh. But I you
gotta give context there.
Well, so one of them is a priest and one of them is Hans.
Thanks.
That sounded really mean, but I think that's how Hans himself would describe it. I'm not being a bully, I don't think. But
also, you've been married for a month and a half, but continue.
Well, it's a month and a half more than you.
This is true.
Checkmate.
But continue. What's married life like, a wise one?
So it's that she's very supportive that I'm,
He's not
wise. Oh, hey, I'm doing something. I'm doing like a podcast with my friends. And she's like, you know what? That's very cool. I'm very happy for you. It's like good to have hobbies like that. This is, honestly something I'm surprised you didn't do sooner. But her reaction when she finds out that it's like watching every Steven Seagal movie and talking about it for the podcast is not as supportive. So there is a bit of, not that Steven Seagal is permanently banned from the apartment in which she lives, but she is trying to severely curtail the amount of Seagal that she is exposed to. So I am just like literally like over here just like watching Seagal movies on my lunch break, like in this apartment that we're not even fully moved into. So she is not subjected to all the sheer uncut, just kilos of Seagal that we are highballing this entire year. I'm doing this for her. I'm protecting her.
Oh,
and because
gosh.
she won't let me. So, it's for the best, honestly, though. We don't really want Seagal tainting the place where, we make our life.
That's probably smart.
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say the less Seagal you watch, the better off you are. So in that case, like, it is, truly, she is the best life situation you can be in. I am the worst. And the disparity will only widen over our first beautiful year of marriage.
So final closing thoughts from everybody. Go, Hans.
This was, I'm gonna stick to my guns. I'm gonna say this was a good movie. It would have been this is on the lowest side of good that I can possibly say. Like, it's, I still say that it's a good movie. It would have been so much better if it just didn't include Steven Seagal and Steven Seagal's ego, because they could have actually had proper writing and a person who could actually deliver lines.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Zachary.
It was weird. It's a weird experience watching Steven Seagal in a movie that I don't hate.
I would agree. Mine is very similar. So it's a pretty solid film. Not really gonna say it's good. I think most of these movies, I'll say skip. You don't actually have to watch. Just listen to your 3 favorite lads tell you about it instead. We'll kind of save you time by talking about it for 45 minutes instead of making you watch it for 90 minutes. This is the first one so far when it actually say, you could watch it, you could put it on TV and have a worse time. if you're an absolute like weirdo like me who just likes watching movies enough that you could say, hey, I have a very mediocre movie you didn't even like that much, do you want to watch it for a second time? And I'd go, yeah, sounds good, sure. Then watch it again. But what I will say about it is that, it turns out the trick to make a decent movie with Steven Seagal in it is to not make a Steven Seagal movie, just make a movie that happens to have Seagal in it. It'll turn out halfway decent. The worst part will be Seagal, but you win some, lose some. But really, if you watch it once, you could be worse off, but also you could be much better off because this movie is Die Hard on a boat, and you also could just watch Die Hard, and Die Hard is a better movie. So if you just run out of action movies to see and you need something else, put it on. It'll be a bit of a hoot. But I would honestly just, if you said, do you want to watch this movie or rewatch Die Hard, I'm going to rewatch Die Hard every single time.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine if this movie also took place during Christmas.
No, I refuse to. I started to conjure the picture in my head and then I stopped it. I cut it off. I came in like, no, like, a guy, like, a little version of me inside my brain with like a PA headset on and like a copy of the script came in. No, we're not doing that. Stop it. Don't imagine that. Don't imagine Christmas Under Siege. Don't imagine like the boat has like lights like decorated around inside the cabin. Don't imagine that he's cooking a Christmas feast. Don't imagine that whenever she bursts out of the cake that she's wearing like a kind of like elf or like Mrs. Claus costume or something. Yep. No, shut it down. Okay, close the Mind Palace off. We're not allowing this to infect it.
You thought about it a lot more
we're closing it off.
You said you did.
That was amazing.
The Mind Palace is closed.
Was
Everybody
that all off the
leave.
Dome? That was pretty great.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Christmas Under Siege. Christmas Under Siege, also soon to be on Fox News. Okay, anyway, Aaron.
So I will say my closing thoughts on this movie.
God.
It is actually not a terrible watch. If you got nothing to do on like a weekday night, go ahead and put this movie on. However, it does not compare to the film that I have in my head about what it could have been in the edit. There's a much cooler movie contained somewhere in here that just is trying desperately to get out, but is stuck and can't quite manage.
So out of everything so far, this is the closest we get to a watching recommendation, and still we have 3 recommendations above it. We have Die Hard, we have the fictional version that this movie could have been, and we have the Under Siege like documentary series that Amazon Prime tried to suggest you to.
Yes.
All of those you're probably better off watching. But this is still
better off
kind of a recommendation to watch.
Yeah, you're probably better off watching a lot of other things.
Can we do a bonus pod on that Under Siege Amazon Prime series?
Also, this is not a good movie to watch if you want to know about like what Steven Seagal is like as an actor.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually a pretty bad study in Steven Seagal.
It is the best Steven Seagal movie, probably, but also the worst to help you understand what is Steven Seagal, or why is Steven Seagal.
Yeah.
Why is Steven Seagal?
Who is, what is, when is, none of
is
those will be answered by
Steven Seagal. But that will be our episode this week. Thank you all for joining us, all 2 of you. Thanks, Mom.
0 of you. Okay, thank you, Aaron's mom and Aaron's dad.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Please don't leave us too angry of a comment talking about how much this movie sucks. We know.
We are very aware. So we will see you next week.
That means one of us has to die. Don't mention it, brother.
So one thing that a truly original thought that I had that nobody said before me, like Hans didn't bring up, this is something I'm bringing up, is that this is actually the first movie. So it keeps the unofficial naming scheme that we've noticed, where Steven Seagal is under siege. It works as like a descriptor of his character in the movie, but it loses the studio mandated snappy 3-word title. This is an even snappier 2-word title. And it ends up all the better off for that. So, all those coked up studio executives, turns out they didn't know what they were talking about. That's a pretty cool point that you made, Zach. Thanks for bringing that up. Hans didn't bring this up right after we finished recording, and then Zach swooped in to steal his thunder. That didn't happen. Yeah, but that's it.